Hello, this is IPU and Lorena Saldierna. Um, Coming back in regards of the studies of clinical pastorship. And when we were talking about the the three samples of the samples that we were telling you that we gathered together in order to tell you or to make a comment, right? Because the clinical pastorship is really with the intentions to help you out to cope with all the things that are around you that you have believing you cannot cope with, right? We're going to talk about the story of three ladies. One was with not much of education. She was living in other times when the school was not available for everybody's. She might be probably more than 80 years old by now. When the school it was taught by the church and it was given by the priest. The other lady is a person who was able to obtain a little bit more of education. Probably she'll be over 60 years old, right? And she was able to go to the public education, right? With all the stage for people is given where they just have to go and sit down and learn as they watch and listen, right? And probably to repeat what they have learned in order to receive extra credits for their learnings. And the story of this other girl who was able to advance, right, was younger, probably over their 30s, over their 40s, right? And they had the same gender. And the unknown, the worst, were not able to be detected. It was surrounding them all the time. The worst means things that can cause you death, which means that all these people were always in danger to die or dying, to perish, because the way they were trained along their lives, probably the education they had, it was given by their worst enemy, which we were talking the other day. Be careful from who you're learning. Probably they're teaching you what you know because they want to get rid of you, because they don't want you there, because they want you to go with somewhere else, or probably to walk paths that you don't know. And some people have strategies of playing and playing. You probably end up perishing. The unknown, the worst that it can happen to you, it was what it was happening to these three ladies, the ones that we're going to develop In our conversation today, the First Lady, she was instructed into the beauty to hang around with the very young ones, with the little boys, with the little girls, with the babies. The people received a lot of benefits from the Lord because you were in charge of caring from the very little ones, because they were known to live in heaven, right? And if you were with them, the Lord was watching for you because the children belong to the kingdom of God, right? And they were with children all the time, thinking that it was a very good blessing. The other one, the one with over 60, she was hanging around with animals to take them to their home because they were lost. And she was taken from home to home, taking these dogs back to their home because they were lost. And by learning the way they were living, the animals, by learning and hanging around with puppies, with growing up dogs, and giving birth all these dogs, and by watching them, the way they were mating, they hang around these environments of thinking unconsciously that their lives would be, since they were very little, just the same way. It's just life, right? Sometimes they used to say, it's the way it is. It's the life all about. Eventually, right, without knowing that it was probably a way to dismiss this girl from their parents' house, she grew up thinking that was the mission in life of everybody, just to give birth and to have a family, and to watch for the husband, and just to keep on loving each other, right? That was the worst thing that could happen to a person. And the other person, when she was younger and able to go to a higher level of education, was being observed. It was followed by people who thought women are good for nothing, that women will never develop, that women are not the type of person who are going to sit down and make money. They don't care, that they're really people who are not going to excel in any way. And as you see, by being watched, their records were observed. They were taken, purchased by people, pulling all together all these pages in order to argue and discuss with others, teachers, employers, instructors, tutors, right? Doctors, hospitals. Whatever happened to this kid? It's a girl. And her mother, that and that and that. And her dad, that and that and that. After she grew up a little bit older, and by having all these people collecting information in regards of what she was doing and what is and who was the person, where is she working, whether for to steal her job, whether for to steal the references, whether for to steal their personal information, whether to create an impersonator. The worst happened to this lady, that a job was denied, their school grades were altered by somebody else's because references, because everything was involving the injury of introducing a benefit of the doubt for other impersonator in order to help their records, in order to help their lifestyle, in order to help the other person to get out from all the mistakes they eventually were making using the records of this person who really cared for going to school, have the work done, do the homework, you know. It was the worst that ever happened to this person. And the person was not able to notice it. Just the same, like the lady with all these dogs and all this lifestyle, it was the worst that it was happening to them, and they were not able to notice. To get around all these children and to be contaminated with all kinds of epidemics, they were not able to see all this damage in their lives. And they were contaminating other children, in another way. Why is that it was considered the worst? The lady who was old, she was over 80 years old, she was not able to really work enough in order to supply for little children's. She was not able to purchase shoes. She was not able to purchase them a coat. She was not able to purchase food for everybody's. She was not able to purchase notebooks, pencils, toys. She was not able to sustain the rent of a house, nor to pay bills, nor to take them out. And still, she insisted that it was okay for them to watch for the children, and it didn't matter what kind of sacrifices they could probably done, even physically, to go and dance for a little bit and to earn some money after teaching some people dancing, right? And to get in very dangerous business because they thought that it was important to get money in their pockets in order to hang around children because they were close to the Lord, because they were in the kingdom of heaven, and because they had to be watched by the Lord. Until eventually somebody came causing the worst thing ever, right? Which she was speaking that all the practices they had were illegal, immoral, and unacceptable. And these people were growing older and older and older. And they insisted and that was the way to live without education, without a way to make it in life, right? It was the worst. And their lives eventually it was diminished. They were not very well treated socially because what they were practicing, because what they were doing, which means that the worst was happening to them. And they were not able to see, they were not able to overcome the worst. Versus the other lady and the other person who grew up around dogs, right? Mating all the time, having all these puppies, getting contaminated by the fleas, by all the dog's disease, Lyme disease, by not having enough education to fight, not even to pay for a good rent, a good room at least. They depend on having and have to live around with people who socialize with animals, and where they eventually stop going from school and eventually just work helping somebody clean their homes, probably their gardens, probably keeping an eye on their children's, where they became poor. But it was the diseases which were hosting the animal kingdom, right? At that level, right? And they were not able to see the worst that it was happening to their lives. Because eventually they got babies. And it was just one lady with the promise of that one gentleman will come, and eventually passed away. The man passed away. And she never had, somebody probably who could help her out with a salary, with an extra income as the husband. And she ended up with children because the way she chose, or probably unconsciously thought that's the way it was. And the other lady, because it was watched, the friends, right? The possibly boyfriends were taken. The jobs, the best jobs were taken. Probably good salaries were taken. The opportunity to graduate on time probably was taken. In between exchanging grades, secretly with people engaging in immoral practices. It was happening the worst to this girl, to this lady, to this adult lady. And they had to suffer the worst. And they were not able to see the worst. They were not able to consciously see the unknown. They were not able to understand, to watch at a glance what it was wrong. And the mind dies. It gets sucked in practices of a daily lifestyle, depending on the educational level and training, when we ought to learn the strategies, how to overcome and how to fight back the worst. Clinical pastorship is designed to find paths, to listen. So many stories in order to learn where we are at. And like I was telling you, starting this conversation, beginning the year, it's not for you to compare and how bad you look. It's not for you to see how poor you are compared to others. It's not for you that you can see yourself how stressed out and ill you are now. It's for to go from there and to say and to accept that's the way it's been all this time, and that probably by looking at it, all the things that you have might not be the best. But if you look for strategies and to overcome the unknown and the worst, probably you can have a better ways of understanding. Probably you could become richer. Probably you you could become healthier, mentally aware of what is really happening. Probably you learn how to love yourself and to say, maybe I don't see myself so beautiful, and probably I am beautiful. And I don't see myself beautiful because I probably have placed somebody else's. And when you learn how to see yourself with love, you see yourself beautiful, right? And then you have a mental health and you have a better expectations for the future in order to help you out to live a better life, right? Let us continue with all these things some other time, and I really appreciate your attention.